What's up, YouTube? Today I have Matt Casturo on the channel to help share some information about the profession of strength and conditioning and the many different aspects about the career. Matt recently graduated from Ohio State with his DPT, and he also has his YouTube channel, The Movement System, with close to 15,000 subscribers at this point, which it's getting up there. And on his channel, he helps educate people in strength and conditioning, exercise science, and preparing people for the CSCS exam. He has a Facebook group that's growing to help people pass the CSCS exam. Matt, welcome to the channel.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, so just tell me a little bit about your academic background and what got you into strength and conditioning in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually interestingly chose Ohio State for its physics engineering program. That was initially what I applied for. Went into that for a year, and I actually really liked it, but I didn't love like working with computers and programming and the day-to-day life of that job. I thought it was interesting, but decided to change paths after about a year into exercise science, and love that. Loved learning about the body. After exercise science, I applied to a bunch of PT schools, about 5 or 6 PT schools, and got the big old thumbs down from all of them actually, and took a gap year. And honestly, super glad I did. That was kind of my year to get some practical experience. I had a personal training business with a pretty good handful of clients. I had actually worked for Nike in undergrad, which was a really good experience. Made some connections there. I worked as in corporate fitness a little bit, and then I also worked as a strength and conditioning coach at a high school, which was honestly the best job that I've ever had. And after a year, I still had too many more questions. More questions about the body, more questions about movement assessment, more questions about how this and that works. So I reapplied, got into physical therapy school at Ohio State, and spent 3 years there. Had a great experience learning a ton about PT, and then also developing, the business side of things with YouTube, Instagram, Facebook group, stuff like that. And, now I've just graduated, and, happy to be doing that all full time, and putting a lot of content out, and, exploring the world a little bit too.
Nice, man. Yeah, that sounds like you've been around a little bit then. You've seen a little bit of all kinds of different stuff in college and academia and out in the professional world a little bit.
Yeah.
What kind of inspired you to go from strength and conditioning to PT, I guess?
Honestly, for me, it was just, I still had more questions, like I had more questions about, different movement patterns, how to train, like the science behind certain things, neuroscience. Like there was a lot of things that I didn't understand fully. And looking back, there probably were easier ways to learn some of those things than going to physical therapy school. But at the same time, it was a good experience, and it definitely gives you a really good background in movement assessment and science, and advanced training. So it blends well with strength and conditioning, even though it's not a direct, I guess, correlate to a lot of the material. But obviously physical therapy school is pretty diverse. You get a lot of information on geriatrics, oncology, acute care, like all these different areas. But I guess at that point, coming out of undergrad and in a gap year, trying a bunch of different things, I still had a broad number of interests, so it kind of matched.
Yeah. I think that the big thing about PT and strength and conditioning is that there's the rehab side, and then I think there's a big gap in the world about trying to connect the two, because you can always take it a step further and try to establish those healthy habits that I think a lot of patients struggle to with. I think they look at therapy as sort of short term. I don't know if you've had this experience, but
Yeah.
there's some people that are more motivated than others. So I think it's really good to have both aspects in the career, where you have a strength and conditioning background and a rehab background. You can kind of connect the two. What advice would you give somebody that's sort of like younger, trying to pursue strength and conditioning as a full-time job?
Ooh, all right, that's a good one. If I was a young strength and conditioning professional right now, what I would probably do is 6 to 12 months before applying to your ideal job, or applying to an internship that was ideal for you, I would be reaching out to that person and saying, hey, this is like what I'm interested in. What can I do in the next 6 to 12 months to be a great candidate for you? And I think that's underrated because a lot of people, they want it right now. And, unfortunately, like it takes some time to build into that career. And, a lot of people need to get experience with personal training, with, doing something with people before jumping in and having, a high school team or a college team that's under their control, right? Like that's, I mean, it's, unfortunately there is that discrepancy between like maybe you have the knowledge and you feel ready, but there's quite a responsibility to having a whole team, in your control. So you probably need a little bit more experience than you think, and just be willing to learn. So contact people that you're interested in working for or working with, and just ask them, what do I need to do to be a great candidate?
I know you've talked about like this in some of your other content that you've had out there too about internships. Just kind of discuss like your opinion on the importance of internships in the field.
Yeah, for strength and conditioning, that's kind of the way it works, at least for now, at most places, is that you kind of have to have an internship or two or three before you necessarily get a good job offer from somewhere. Usually, usually, I mean, I don't know what percentage, but maybe 75% of strength and conditioning facilities are hiring based on their interns, their previous interns, or interns of other strength conditioning gyms that they know. So doing well in one internship is kind of like a networking tool for that gym and whatever gym those gym owners or those coaches know. So I did a 500-hour internship at Ohio State through Olympic Sports, and it was a lot. You had to get up and train the rowers, and actually the rowers were really late at night. Rowers were like 5 p.m. and then I think it was women's volleyball at like 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. And you had to be there basically from women's volleyball at 5:30 to 6 a.m. All the way through to like rowers at 5 p.m.
Wow.
So, you had a little break in the middle there. We would usually train as a group of coaches and stuff, but there's a bunch of long days, and a 500-hour internship, it probably turned out to be like 600 or so. I think it was only 4 months. So, if you do the math, that's a lot of hours. And then they also would come in the weekends, but there's good experiences there too. Like we had to, or got to, I guess, train all the Columbus Crew, like the professional soccer team. We had to do all their like performance testing. So that was kind of cool. So there's a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, it's a lot of work, and you have to put a lot of time into that internship where you're not necessarily or not usually getting paid. So, but it's kind of similar to PT school. You're going to PT school for 3 years and you're paying for that experience. So, putting in a few months to an internship or even multiple internships as like a starting point is, that's not a bad starting point for a lot of people in the field.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's kind of more like a not what you know, it's who you know kind of thing for
Yeah, I mean, it's both. It's definitely both. The way the internships work is usually you're just you're emailing a gym owner, you're emailing a head strength and conditioning coach, and you're just asking for when are you taking interns. Most places, they're having one or two assistant coaches working with a team of 30 or 40, so they want to have one or two interns in pretty much all the time to do spotting, cleaning up the gym, stuff like that. So, I mean, most, at least college facilities and even private facilities, high schools will have one, two, three interns at any time. So, it's not terribly hard to get an internship. It's just about, you having to relocate to wherever that internship is, usually in big cities, around universities, stuff like that. And then, putting in your time there.
yeah. Talk about your experience at Ohio State specifically, because I know they have a mecca of talent there, specifically
Oh,
Big
yeah.
Ten school, a lot of high quality athletes coming there. Talk about the benefits of going to a program like Ohio State.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good people there. On the topic of internships, since we're already kind of there, um, definitely go into your internship willing to learn. Everyone does everything differently. there's going to be coaches who, swear by super high volume programs year round. And there's going to be coaches who swear by, you know, doing a lot of power and velocity training year round. And maybe you've learned a certain approach, maybe you've, you know, disagree with some aspects of their training and stuff. But, especially as an intern, the biggest thing you could do is just pretend like you don't know anything and just learn as much as you can, because there's definitely at that point, at least, more that you don't know than you do. So that's really what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who's willing to learn and willing to put in the time and get a good experience, not the person who comes in knowing the most. And I think that's a mistake a lot of young interns make, where they're trying to kind of prove themselves. But then going back to Ohio State, like um, there's internships with football which are really competitive and everyone wants, and aren't great internships, to be honest. I actually had some friends that went through it and did great and ended up getting like assistant jobs in with the football team or with Olympic sports there. But I personally liked Olympic sports. It gave you a good experience with honestly all the Olympic teams. So swimming, rowing, volleyball, field hockey, soccer, basketball, baseball, even. Like we saw a bunch of athletes, and it was a great experience because you're seeing a lot. If you go to a high school though, you could get a different good experience. Like you can get it a little bit more, probably a little bit more handle on what you're doing, rather than just kind of being there to spot and clean up the gym. Like if you're at a high school with a good coach, at least in Ohio, I know a lot of good strength conditioning coaches that would do really good mentorship with an intern, because they have the time, they have the the space for it, and they would probably let you handle programming a little bit more. So there's a ton to say about internships, but there's a lot out there if you're willing to seek out those experiences and be willing to learn. But yeah, in terms of Ohio State, that's a good example of a big university, and it's kind of what you make out of it. You definitely have to make some of your own, opportunities at a big school like that, because no one's looking for you. You have to look for them.
Right.
So that was part of it. Just getting in connection with a lot of different people. The world of strength and conditioning is actually fairly small. Um, Even at Ohio State, with 60,000 students on campus or something like that, and a big city, what is there, maybe 100, 200 people who are really in the field of strength and conditioning. You have a handful of researchers, you have a handful of head coach, assistant coaches, and then some exercise science students. And there's obviously a lot of people that get into like cardiac rehab and exercise physiology and personal training, and there's a good bit of those folks around, as well, that you could learn from. But yeah, the strength and conditioning field is relatively small. You have to meet the right people and stick your neck out and get a good experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the competitiveness about getting some of those like football internships at Ohio State. Even though there's only about 200 people in the program, how many spots do you think that they're fighting for in terms of internships in like a football program?
Oh yeah. I don't even know how it worked there. It was kind of odd. Like the only guy that I knew who got it had already played, uh, college football somewhere else, and I don't really know. Like I think that the football program was even more like you have to know someone to be there, and they
Okay.
didn't want to just take an intern that emails you and interviews or whatever. They kind of want someone with I don't know, the right personality and character and all that, to fit the culture. I think, at least from my experience, Olympic sports were a little bit more open to, you know, like we had some coaches that were more on the endurance side, some coaches that were more on the strength side, just different backgrounds, different experiences, students versus, young professionals. So yeah, I mean, you kind of have to find the internship that works for you too. Like I wouldn't have liked that internship because it's too much of, a bunch of ego in there, but I guess that's a little bit of every internship in strength and
Yeah.
conditioning, but yeah, you just have to find one that works for you.
Okay. Um, you've worked with a lot of populations, I feel like, in this world of strength and conditioning. What's been the one that's like been the most surprising to you that you've actually enjoyed that you didn't feel like you'd enjoy?
Hmm. Yeah, you know what? I actually liked acute care, and I did not think that. I actually used to joke around in my first year of PT school that I didn't even want an outpatient rotation that was near a hospital. I was like, I don't want to even be near one. But I turned out really liking acute care, like in terms of physical therapy school, because there's like a big hospital that I was at. It's on campus at Ohio State. It's called the James Cancer Center, and it's 22 floors. And right about on the 15th floor, you have like this nice little corner gym, and it's nothing crazy. It's just a treadmill, a seated recliner bike, some weights, some free weights, a big table, a set of stairs. But that's the bone marrow transplant floor, and really interesting experience. Just going there and working with people and seeing how they progress through a bone marrow transplant. Before transplant, they're a lot of times coming in really healthy. They can do a mile walk in 12-14 minutes or something like that. And as you get to day -2, -3, day +2, +3, you see big changes in their physical activity, what they're able to do. And just from a strength and conditioning perspective, you just have to modify, volume that they can recover from, stuff like that. So I thought that was an interesting population to work with. I've had other, experiences just in personal training that were interesting. Like working with kids was always good. That was definitely my favorite overall. I think the surprisingly good was the cardiac or the, the rehab floors in acute care. But the overall best one, I think, was high school. Like, it's just really fun to work with high school athletes. They're so young and don't know what they're doing. And yeah, they're gripping the bar like the wrong way to bench press. And you're like, come on. But it's fun. Like, you see them progress, you see them put on weights and feel good about themselves. That's a lot of fun.
I discussed in your intro about you teaching people more about the CSCS exam
Yeah.
specifically. I know you have several credentials. Do you still, like, I hear out there on the internet a lot, I guess, about the CSCS being like the gold standard for working with athletes. Do you still see that credential as being up there with some of the best that you can get?
Yeah, I really do think it is. It's becoming more popular actually in like sports physical therapy, personal training, as well. But in this field of strength and conditioning, you pretty much just have to have the CSCS. And beyond that, it's not like, oh, there's something above that. It's just you get your CSCS and then you find out like who and you get experience. But that's really the way to go. There is some other strength and conditioning certification now that I think you have to have some year or two of experience with certain, like a high school or college or something like that. But I don't think anyone's too worried about that. I think it's more, the CSCS more than qualifies you in terms of knowledge. And then it's just about, actually practically getting experience, writing good programs, making good connections with athletes, being a good team member. So, all that stuff kind of goes on top of the CSCS.
Yeah, and I guess for anybody who will be watching this in the future here, I just want to plug Matt's course, which is the movement system. I decided to study for the CSCS and use Matt's course. It was very well planned out and written, in my opinion. Matt actually goes through and does certain lectures on all the topics that you'll need to know about the CSCS. Do you plan on like updating that as the CSCS evolves? Is that going to be like a side business that you continue to work on?
Yeah, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Like that was like about a year in the making during physical therapy school. And it was actually a lot of fun, just really diving into the book and covering basically each chapter in a in-depth video, like trying to figure out exactly how to explain these concepts, that not only are you understanding the science, but you're understanding how it applies to athletes, how that scientific concept fits into like program design. And it's really helped a lot of people make those connections that I think just reading the book a lot of times you miss. Because I think, at least whenever I read the book, I mean, I read the book and took the test in undergrad during that, or right before actually, that 500-hour internship with strength and conditioning. And even after passing the exam, there were so many things in that book that I didn't know, that now 3 years later, having like kind of mastered the book a little bit more, that I can now pick up on and definitely write better programs, feel more confident in the gym as a strength conditioning coach. So, being able to share some of that with other people has been, really beneficial. And I'm continually updating it, especially as new information comes out. Just in the last few months, we've updated the nutrition, the sports psychology, updated some of the questions in the practical application side of things. Yeah, just keeping it going, especially as I learn more, even.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure you're always learning new stuff with all the
Yeah.
continuing education that I'm sure you're going through with all this stuff. I guess talking sort of about the CSCS as well and all this educational stuff that we've been talking about, do you see personal trainers in the next 10 years getting more educated in terms of like going through college to, understand more about exercise science, not just one of those, mill programs that just churn out personal trainers, generic personal trainers?
Man, yeah, it's really interesting. There's a big shift in like what's going on with personal trainers, and I think we're kind of right in the middle of it now. There's, I don't know how I don't know the percentage or anything like that, but there's a growing percentage of personal trainers that are working non-traditionally, meaning that they're not going to a big box gym with a certification that they could sit for in a day or two, and then just taking a job. There's a lot more personal trainers that are building, a personal brand or like a personal style, a niche that they work with, like weight loss experts or, you know, endurance training experts or muscular conditioning experts, whatever area they want to become an expert in, and then seeking out their own clientele, and maybe working part-time at a gym or something like that. But I think there's definitely a growing audience of people who are interested in the business side of things, who are interested in, learning more, like more detailed information about like specific populations, whether that be, bodybuilders or, there's a lot of different niches right now that personal trainers can get into, which is really interesting. Yeah, I think the education side of things will continue to increase, and beyond the formal like continuing education hours that are required for a certification, which is not a lot. I think there's going to be more personal trainers that are just interested in learning for learning's sake, and just going out and taking, weekend courses to meet people, taking online courses to learn about an area that they can market to their clientele. Especially as clients or as personal trainers become freed from the constraints of like a small box gym, especially as they can kind of reach out to the whole world of the internet. I think that personal trainers will seek more knowledge and see the value in that. So yeah, I think it's a good shift.
Interesting. If you could make one change about the industry in general, I mean, if you can think of anything that's a
Okay.
glaring flaw that you would like to change, what would you change and why?
Oof. Um, there's a really low barrier to entry in terms of putting out information. I think that's a good thing in some ways because you have to get started, and you have to like kind of start putting information out there, whether it's true or not, or whether you know what you're talking about or not. But I guess if I had to change one thing, it would just be that uh, like people don't get stuck in ruts. That somehow there could be like a snowfall every once in a while, because I think a lot of people, if you think about like a sled hill down the mountainside, they get started pushing the sled, and just the more times you go down the hill, you just end up with a certain track, right?
Right.
And I heard this analogy the other day and thought it was like really good, because I think a lot of people gaining experience are just going down the hill more times, and their sled ruts get deeper and deeper, and then they just keep going down them. And maybe they have two or three paths, but I just think a lot of people could use like a little bit of a fresh perspective. And I think it takes a lot of I don't know, like it somewhat is your personality. There's a lot of people who are continually willing to learn and see what their mistakes were and change, but definitely a lot of people that aren't. So just openness to continue to learn, especially on the scientific side, um, and even if it goes even if it goes against some of your experience, that'd be a good thing.
So being willing to change basically, and
Yeah.
maybe even instead of getting into a new path, maybe just changing the hill entirely, right?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
All right, now we're kind of going to shift into the financial aspect about the field in general.
Yeah.
What would like your entry level strength and conditioning person expect to make coming right out into the field new?
And I think I'd have to check, but I think I got around $30 an hour working 12 hours a week or something like that in my first strength conditioning job. And I think that's pretty standard. That said, um, I think we were there and working more than the 12 hours, like, because we'd stay before, come before, set up the gym, stay afterward, write programs outside of the gym. So, maybe that works out closer to like $20 an hour or something like that. You know, After you figure that all in. But honestly, great job. Like I was making more than that in corporate fitness and in personal training, actually. In corporate fitness, there was like some weird pay system where, so I was at like a Wendy's corporate, and that was like their corporate headquarters and their gym there. So if you're training like a group of 2 people, you make 30. If you're training a group of 3 people, you make 40. Training a group of 5, you make 50, something like that per hour. But if you're just, working in the gym on general stuff, you make like a $15 an hour base salary. But I think overall, like corporate fitness could average out to being like more hours, a little bit higher pay. You could expect like, I don't know, maybe $25 an hour there pretty consistently for 30, 40 hours, however much you want to work. Personal training, that's a really interesting one because there's a huge variability between like box gyms and standard personal training. And, by the end of when I was personal training, I was charging like $100 an hour. So, and that's not uncommon. Even like $65, $70 an hour is pretty standard in a big city. But for strength conditioning, it's you could probably expect like around that $25 to $30 an hour type of a job, and the hours, that's the tough part, because a lot of times people want a job for 4 or 6 hours a week. You here start with 1 or 2 teams, or a high school, you're just really training people after school, 5, I don't know, 3 to 5 or something like that. So, you figure 3 to 5, I think we got like 2.5 hours per session or something like that, 5 times a week. So, that's, it's a start, but you definitely have to do something else, before or after or something like that to make it work. But there are some full-time positions in strength conditioning in the private sector. Um, it's strength conditioning, but you probably would also do like kind of a hybrid role where you're working with, an adult class at 7 a.m. And then you have, your kids come in from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., and you train those groups, and then, whatever. But I think in that setting, you could do pretty well. I've seen salaries in Columbus around like $40,000 as a start, which is, yeah, it's not a bad salary for a strength conditioning professional doing what you like. And in that setting, they would work, with some general population. Usually you'd have your gen pop at noon, at, one or 2 classes in the morning, 1 class after work hours. And then you have your athletes come in at, certain hours of the day. So it's it's a long day, and it's a interesting mix of what you're working with, but you're working as a strength conditioning coach on a solid salary. So that's definitely an option for people as well. Um, yeah, so that's about this, I guess, the scale. I think the top 10% of personal trainers actually do the best of any of the industries, which is kind of interesting. Like if you think you can kind of rise to the top, um, in strength conditioning, there's kind of a little bit of a ceiling. There are some strength conditioning coaches in like colleges and high schools that make like, 6-figure salaries and above, but that's pretty rare. Um, Maybe that'll change a little bit, actually, especially with NCAA changes, with, athletes getting, more money, and stuff like that. Like maybe the strength conditioning coaches get valued a little bit more, and that brings it up. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, That's kind of what I would say, at least based on my experience. You know, in a small town, it's going to be tougher because you don't have as many people. A lot of times they're not willing to pay, big city prices.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, yeah, it's definitely going to be different depending on your area.
How important is marketing, would you say, to the whole industry? I think that's like the game changer in terms of like your salary. I think just from my experience with it, which is very limited at this point, but
Yeah.
it's very much an entrepreneurial field in ways that you have to market yourself and your own credentials to get business out there.
Yeah. I mean, in a private setting, that could be really huge. I mean, in a college setting, not important really at all because
Yeah.
I guess not important to like your salary because it's determined by the athletic director 10 years ago and it's been changing 3 to 5% since then probably.
Right.
And
Right.
you're going to get in and you're going to get your athletes, it might be important to market yourself to get your foot in the door for an internship and to market yourself while you're there as a young professional to see that you're willing to learn and get that position. But after that, you're kind of with your teams and that's how that goes. But in a private setting, for example, it can be huge because if you can change the class size from having 5 high school athletes at 7 a.m. All throughout the summer, and you can recruit out another 10 athletes and make it a 15 you know athlete crew that you're working with just because you reached out to them. Well, your gym owner or your manager or however that relationship works is going to obviously value that because you just tripled the income of that hour slot, right? So if you can through social media, through connections with the local school district, with connections through other athletes, or going to volunteer events, whatever, if you can get more athletes in the door for that gym, that's going to add value to you. And if nothing else, you'll be in a position to negotiate a higher salary or a higher hourly pay, or however you work that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's more or less on the situation. Like, where are you working at in the field? But, if you're more in academia or in some place that, they feed you all your clientele, you don't have to worry as much about your marketing,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah, one area though that I think, and this actually might have been a better answer to your earlier question about like what I would do if I had to start back over or something like that. And you could actually look for a high school or look for a facility that doesn't have a strength and conditioning program and start one. Because just because like my high school never had a strength and conditioning program, they had the head coaches would take athletes into to lift every once in a while,
Yeah.
but for the most part, that the high school didn't have a program. So like if you're in Forward Township area of Pennsylvania, like you can go talk to their athletic director at my old high school and try to negotiate like creating a strength and conditioning program. Like you know go in there with like a folder full of programs and the benefits of strength conditioning and how to marketing yourself, and say like I'd like to start with a few teams and use your weight room and create a program. And maybe they shoot it down like, oh, we don't have the budget, we don't have the time, whatever. But it's worth shooting for, especially if you're in like a small town area and there aren't a lot of opportunities. You might just have to create one.
Yeah, I mean, that's really smart advice because that goes back to kind of what I was talking about with that entrepreneurial aspect about it. I mean, you got to sort of make the opportunities out there if there are none,
Yeah.
that present themselves, I guess, basically. Um, what do you think your ROI has been on, like all the investments that you've put into doing the certifications that you've done in personal training? Do you think it's been worth it for you?
Yeah, I think so. um, I've put a lot into education for sure. But yeah, you see it pay off over time. At the time it doesn't feel worth it usually, but I think it does over time, and it's kind of hard to see that when you're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
I think it has paid off. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have like one piece of financial advice that you could give somebody like in their early 20s, just entering into this kind of career, healthcare, or even strength and conditioning?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I would focus on like improving your value more than improving anything else. Like your value is determined by, obviously your knowledge, but also your connections and your willingness to work. A lot of people won't put in work until they see a result, and that's just kind of not the best way to do it. Like, you have to put out like a lot of information, a lot of put in a lot of work before you see the benefit of it. And honestly, the things that I've seen the most benefit out of, I've not expected from the beginning. It's just been, oh, I'm going to teach, about this topic on YouTube because it's interesting. And then you just keep putting out videos, And, for a long time, it just seems like this big waste of time that you're spending all your time and energy and learning all this stuff for nothing. But then, slowly over time, it becomes worth it. So, it's hard to tell on the front end what is going to be worth it. Try to find something that's unique and valuable, especially if you can find something that's unique and valuable. That's where you want to put your time.
Nice. What do you think you'll be doing in the future in terms of strength and conditioning? Do you still look at it as going to be like one of your main focuses, or is it going to be sort of like more of a side gig now that you're a PT?
I really don't know. I only plan for like 6 months to a year out, and then I just take massive action on whatever that plan is. And then I'll make a new plan for 3 to 5 years, I have no idea. And I think that's an okay way to do it, because like realistically, if you have a 5-year plan, like it's probably going to change anyway. You know, it's not a bad idea to have some general ideas. Like maybe I'm working for or involved with like a sports performance facility in some way. I don't know. Maybe I'm just doing more, online coaching and online programs and stuff like that. Like that's what I'm doing right now, and it's enjoyable. So maybe that continues. Hard to say though.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's hard to see what's coming up for everybody, but do you think that your PT degree has elevated you in terms of credibility in strength and conditioning?
I think in a minor way, yeah. I don't think in a major way though, because I think there is some difference there. As like an educator, or as a professional, like putting out content onto the internet, I think it has increased credibility. But I don't think that as specifically as a strength and conditioning professional, it's necessary to have a background in PT. I think some people decide or want to do it just because but really physical therapy is a separate field from strength conditioning. So what you learn in physical therapy school is like 95% not strength conditioning and
Yeah.
5% strength conditioning related. Um, and I think that's important for people to see, because maybe if you're really in the field of strength conditioning, there's other options, whether that be a master's of strength conditioning or just internships and experience otherwise. So it's good in certain aspects, but definitely not needed in the field of strength conditioning.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about what got you started with like your getting your course going and getting your YouTube channel going. Was it sort of like how we talked about earlier? You just saw an opportunity out there that nobody really had taken up, and you just decided to take it? Or was it something that you were like, man, if I could have had this back in the day, this could have been actually really useful for me, and you could see some value for helping other people?
Yeah, it was basically both of those, especially the second one. Like I really just started making the videos that I was like, man, if someone would have just said it like this, it would have clicked. And I just kept making videos like that, and now it's been like 2 years that I've been doing that, or so, like 2 or 3 years. So yeah, just putting things out in a way that like, oh, if I would have heard about it this way, would have made more sense. So that's kind of what I do with the videos. Not too complicated.
Yeah. Do you have like any plans on expanding out any further, like with your course or anything, any other courses for other certifications, or just the CSCS specifically?
I have something in the works actually, because I think one area that's really challenging for people, and I tend to pick areas that are somewhat overwhelmingly difficult, to teach, because those are areas that are highly valuable. So one area that I think is really challenging is program design, like writing programs, whether that be for personal training or strength conditioning. Um, and I think just it's really hard to find good information about that. There's some textbooks that are okay, but it doesn't give you the practical side of things. It's a lot of theory in textbooks. And then on the practical side of things, it's it's just difficult to write programs like, especially that are specific to athletes that match, the needs. So I'm kind of working on something that involves, writing strength and conditioning programs. But I don't know what the timeline is on that. That's a pretty complex project.
Okay. Um, where are your like goals in the next year? Do you see yourself just settling down and focusing on PT? I know you talked about 5 years is a little too far out, but like where do you see yourself going here in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the next year at least, I'm going to just keep putting out content, and coaching, doing some online coaching, doing some more work with potentially the next online course, and then we'll go from there. Like I think I have enough to teach and provide a lot of value in that aspect. I'm not too worried about formally like you know any type of progression or working up the ladder or anything like that. Like I'm just worried about like right now, where can I provide anyone the most value? And I think what I know in terms of program design and the science behind that, I think I can create a pretty good system out of that no one else really can right now, at least that I know of.
Mhm.
So I think that's where I'm going to spend most of my time.
Do you see yourself going for like the sports clinical specialist thing in PT anytime soon, or do you feel like you're all certificationed out?
I don't know, because I think that would require more clinical experience, and I'm not particularly interested in a ton of clinical experience. I think other people are going to be better suited for that than I am, so I might not do that one.
All right, fair enough. I think that's
Yeah.
really all I had for you, Matt.
All
I
right.
appreciate you coming on the channel though. I'll have everything that you have, your YouTube channel, your course, and all that stuff linked below. But thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So everybody who's watching this, make sure you check out Matt's stuff in the link below. Subscribe. Hope you like this content. And yeah, once again, thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks.